Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Daiwa Anglo-Japanese Foundation. My name is Jason James, and I'm just going to do the introductions. So our two main speakers today are joining us from London and from Kanagawa in Japan, and I'll just very briefly introduce them. So Naoko Yamazaki is a Japanese astronaut. She went on the Space Shuttle Discovery to a mission on the International Space Station in 2010. Subsequently, she's been heavily involved in Japan's space policy, serving as a member of the government's Space Policy Committee and various subcommittees of that. She's also the representative director of Spaceport Japan Association, which is trying to establish multiple spaceports in Japan. And she is on the council of the Earthshot Prize, the Global Environmental Prize. And then our other speaker today is Professor Sara Russell. She is the Natural History Museum's merit researcher in cosmic mineralogy and planetary sciences. And there's a description on this slide of all of the things that she is researching, which I won't run through in a lot of detail, but formation of the solar system and moons, origin of water. And she's heavily involved with various missions going on. NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission, she's a member of the science team there. And she's also involved with JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency. She's a member of the analysis team for Hayabusa 2 and a representative on the International Science Board of JAXA's MMX mission. And I believe she's just come back from Japan. And from here on, I'm going to hand it over to Professor Sara Russell.
Jason, thank you so much for that introduction and for inviting me here. It's such a privilege to be able to talk to the distinguished astronaut, Naoko Yamazaki, about innovations in space and about international relationships in space. So, of course, at the beginning of our explorations in this field, exploration was fueled by competition between the United States and the former USSR, who were both wanting to be the first to reach the big goals like reaching the moon. But today it's a very different landscape. So today the key word is cooperation with nations working together. As an example, as you mentioned, I've just come back from Japan. So I was there last week working with the Japanese Space Agency on a very exciting mission of theirs called MMX. So for those of you that don't know about MMX, it is a Japanese-led mission that's going to go to Phobos, the largest moon of Mars. It's going to collect a sample from the surface, bring it back to Earth in 2029 for the world scientists to analyze. So although it's led by Japan, it definitely involves international cooperation. So there's a German French team that's building a little rover that's going to go across the surface of Phobos. And there's American teams and French teams who are building parts of the instruments that will be on board. But international collaborations in general, of course, are not completely without risk. There was a kind of sad story a couple of years ago. The European mission ExoMars, which was due to launch in 2022 to search for past life on Mars, unfortunately had to be postponed. And that's because it involved collaborations with Russian partners, which weren't possible following the invasion of Ukraine. Well, that story's got a slightly happy ending in that now Europe has found the funding to actually go it alone with that mission. And the UK Space Agency actually recently announced that they are going to fund Welsh and English scientists to build one of the key instruments that will be on board that mission. So that's a spectrometer that's called ENFIS, which is Welsh for rainbow. And so that mission is back on track. It's going to launch in 2028. But it's just an example of how the space exploration world can change so quickly, and it's expanding so quickly as well. So I'm really keen to hear the views of Naoko-san on these issues. So welcome, Naoko-san. And I guess my first question for you is, there are a number of actors from new countries getting involved to the private sector getting involved as well that have become part of this space exploration landscape. So what do you think are the main changes that have been made since you started your journey in space, as it were?
Well, thank you so much for the kind introduction, Jason and Sarah. And First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude for Daiwa Foundation to host this event. And yeah, as Sarah mentioned, the space exploration has been changing rapidly because more players are involved in space exploration. On the low Earth orbit missions, the current ISS, International Space Station, is the main platform, and 15 nations are involved. And now we are switching to a commercial space station and commercial platforms for low Earth orbit. And then instead, the governments, the focus is now beyond the low Earth orbit, and now it's to the moon and to Mars. And but only one nation is not afford for all the systems, because currently we are trying to build infrastructure, not just go there and come back, but now we are building infrastructure, which means the power, electricity, and the communication, and probably the water plant and so on. So just one nation or just one company, it's not affordable. So that is why collaboration is the key. So I think it's more, like somehow like a chaos environment with more players, but at the same time, it is very important to collaborate all together.
Right. Yeah, completely agree. So yeah, and this cooperation's always been regarded as important, as you rightly say. But as I referred to a little bit in my introduction, there are some geopolitical frictions among global powers, and that can cause problems for collaborations. What do you see as the main challenges in that field in the future?
Sure. Let me share some slides.
Okay.
Yep. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sara. So this is my self-introduction, so which is covered by Jason and Sara already. So I will skip that. And this is my recent paper on the space diplomacy from an astronaut's viewpoint at the HARC Journal of Diplomacy. So thanks to the help of Professor Maria. And recently, University of Exeter opened up a space gov platform, which is connecting governments and the private sectors and the academia all together to mitigate risks and increase sustainability in space. So I joined in its advisory group. So the 15 nations involved in ISS, International Space Station, and now the Artemis program involves 32 nations. And so far, and I expect more countries will join in the Artemis Accords. And in parallel, China and Russia has a plan to build International Lunar Research Station, ILRS. And so far, Pakistan, United Arab Emirates, and APSCO is an Asia Pacific Space Committee organization. So it's a platform in the Pacific led by China, signed the agreement for this RLRS. And I expect more countries will join in the program as well. So for the International Space Station, the big two countries, United States and Russia, cooperated together. Even after the Russian invasion to Ukraine, the cooperation continues until 2028. But for the lunar exploration, it's going to be separated in Russian-China alliance and the other Artemis alliance. So that is a big challenge because for the Artemis program or the China-Russia's program, we aim the same spot, the South Pole, because they have South Pole, there are lots of water in an ice shape, or it should be included in some, regolith of the materials of the surface of the moon. And the Artemis program selected 13 candidates of the landing sites, human landing sites near South Pole, because it has, it should have plenty of water, and it should have good communication to the Earth, and it should have a good summer condition. So this is favorite places, but now it's kind of competition to aim the favorite places. So this is a challenge we are facing right now.
That is really interesting to hear. So do you think that there's that this competition between China and Russia on one hand and the US and others on the other, do you think that will kind of make us all do better because we have this sense of competition, or do you think that that complete cooperation would work better in the exploration of the moon and other places as well?
Mm-hmm. Back in 1967, just before the Apollo 11's moon landing, I was very fortunate that lots of nations agreed to sign a space treaty.
Mm-hmm.
100 nations signed a space treaty, and it regulates the basic concepts about the space activities. Any nations cannot own its properties on any planet or even an open space. It should be in a common space. Or for the astronauts or rescue, every nation should support each other and something like that. So it is very fortunate to have the space treaty because it's kind of an umbrella to regulate the basics, but it doesn't regulate commercial activities, nor it doesn't expect such a very active space exploration at that time. So there are lots of, gray zones which is not covered by space treaty. So, and it is very difficult now to make an update of the treaty because yes, some nations and the nations have different philosophies, and it is very challenging to come upon one agreement. So that is why now we have kind of alliance system, Artemis Alliance and the China-Russian Alliance, and they agree and they can enter that alliance. So it's not an hard law, but it's kind of soft law, but it is a practical way.
Yes. So do you think the time has come to maybe rip the Outer Space Treaty up and start again and try and produce a new treaty that's more fit for the 21st century?
Yes.
That needs to be done.
Yeah, it's too complicated to
yes.
But like for example, the Artemis Accords, if some space agency or even some private company builds a lunar base or some facility on the moon, or they can send even unmanned spacecraft to the moon, then to avoid conflicts, it should have a safety zone around the facility or space probes. So it doesn't owning the property on the moon, but it's kind of like keeps a territory around the facility. So it is a very gray zone of the
definitely. Yeah. So you referred to maybe private companies as well being part of the kind of new exploration of the moon and other places. So what do you see as their role going forward in the next decade or few decades? Do you think that ultimately they will kind of rule the space waves, as it were? And do you think that would be an advantage or a disadvantage to space exploration?
Yes, very good point. In a decade or two, if we, moves forward for the space exploration, then probably we can come across some, not to update the treaty, but at least we can expanding some soft laws, I hope. Because for example, for the space debris problem, it is getting very severe in a low Earth orbit because more satellites are launched recently. Satellite constellations like Starlinks and so on. So now the regulation is United Nations are making guidelines, but it is not binding. But each nation has a binding its national law to regulate the space debris, and more nations are regulating those space debris issues.
Right.
So if some umbrella and guidelines in a United Nations level, then each nation is now getting seriously to create its own regulations based on the United Nations guideline. So those movement will probably apply to the space exploration as well. If we have a space treaty and United Nations guideline, then probably will regulate activities for each nations.
Right, great. And do you you mentioned, sorry, you mentioned
yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just would like to hear your opinions as well from your perspective on the space exploration. You're based more, research and academia type. And how would you see this kind of space exploration activities right now?
So I think that I mean, so the work that I'm involved in is more kind of beyond low Earth orbit. It's more kind of looking at moons and Mars and asteroids. And I think that, we're at a really exciting time in the world, and that I'm sure that commercial operations are going to become more important, like SpaceX, for example, being involved in the launches of many NASA missions nowadays. So I think that's going to become more important. But I think you're right to kind of point out to the kind of problems that we have at the moment with the Outer Space Treaty, and the need to deal with things like the debris that's currently in low Earth orbit. I think that's certainly something that's obviously going to become increasingly important to try to sort out, and it can only be done from an international perspective. Really, it's something that affects all of us. So absolutely. So what space projects are you most excited about coming up next?
Oh, I'm excited about lots of space missions, actually, from the space launches. Lots of new space vehicles are coming up, like on a Starship, fully reusable, and I can land on the moon. It can go to Mars, so it is very exciting. And also airplane, space plane types vehicles, like on Virgin Galactic Spaceship 2. Are very steady for operations. I'm very excited about that. And for the satellites, space communications and satellites are so powerful now. So and many other companies now starting involved in the space communications. So this is very exciting area. And zero-G environment, it is very exciting. So not only on the space station, International Space Station, but private space station or even space hotels are coming up in the next decade. So this is exciting. Yeah, it is coming in a
incredible. And what do you think about the Oh, sorry, so you want to show something, but I'm curious, what do you think about the balance in space exploration between having humans in space and robotic space missions? So obviously you have this very rare experience of actually being a human in space. And do you think that adds a lot of value in what we can do in the space environment?
Oh, sure. Yes, because, when I was a college student, I researched on space robotics. So I love robotics.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm privileged to operate robotics arm on board the space shuttle and space station. So I know and I believe the power of the space robotics. And at the same time, I believe in the capability of human beings as well. So once we collaborate more and we can achieve bigger goals. And for the low Earth orbit, probably we can delegate lots of tasks to the space robotics in an automatic way or, remotely controlled from the ground. And then we can, send humans on beyond the moon and Mars, eventually. So
right, amazing. So do you think you'll see humans on Mars in your lifetime?
Yes, I hope so.
That'd be amazing. Right. So tell me about the S booster that you have presenting here.
Yes, S Booster is a space idea, business idea contest held in Japan every year. And so this year held a 6 S Booster contest. And the prize expands in not only Japan, but the Asia Pacific areas. And the Grand Prix was awarded to Astro Mine, which is a JAXA venture company, startup companies. So because JAXA had an experience on asteroid exploration, Hayabusa 2, where Sara had a contribution in those missions. So thank you so much. And congratulations on the recent asteroid Oryx Rex missions as well.
Thank you.
And so, but they want to make more frequent asteroid observation. So they're planning to send a small micro spacecraft on orbit, and it can observe various asteroids monthly, so that they can create a database, and they can sell those databases to space agencies or private companies. So that is their idea. So they want us companies. I'm very excited about that.
Wow, that's amazing. So eventually it will be a commercial idea that the mission will pay for itself and ultimately be profitable. Is that the idea?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's from the space agency JAXA, but it's going to be on a business base.
That's incredible. Could you say a bit more about what instruments will be on board? What sort of measurements will they be taking?
Mm-hmm. Because they send in Procyon, it's in a 6U size, a small space probe, and it's fly by some asteroids. So they utilize Procyon's technologies. So it's almost the same observation experiments. So optical cameras and some, yes.
Okay, that's incredible. And do you know when it will launch?
They're planning in the mid-2020s, so in a couple of years, if they they can launch a business that's quickly. So, and they are planning to send 12 spacecrafts on orbit.
Really exciting.
Yes, it's really exciting.
Yeah. So you mentioned Hayabusa and Hayabusa 2. What are these? Are these your favorite Japanese space contributions, or what do you see as Japan's major contributions to space?
Mm-hmm. But the space exploration, JAXA emphasized on sample return missions. So Hayabusa was the world's first sample return from an asteroid. And Hayabusa 2 is a second attempt. And Hayabusa 2 is reached C-type asteroid. So it's had carbon and some materials create organs of could be origins of the lives. So and then the next mission is MMX. Sarah mentioned about that for the Mars moon Phobos is a target to get the samples back. And so the sample return, because why JAXA is focusing on the sample return is well, what I say, even a small spacecraft can achieve that mission. If to send a human on the surface of the moon or Mars, it should be a huge system. And but the sample return is just one spacecraft can achieve the mission. So that is why it's in a very cost-effective way to get new samples and new knowledge of the asteroid. So that is why we focus on the asteroid, because asteroid has a very low gravity. So it can touch down ground and take off. It's easier from the gravity type planet. So that is why.
Sure, amazing. And just to say, I think Japan has been absolutely world leading in this field. And for me, so I work at a museum. So for me, I think sample return missions are really important for many reasons. So there's many analyses that you can do on a sample that you have returned back to Earth that would be really difficult for a spacecraft to be able to do on orbit, or even a rover that's on the surface of a asteroid or moon or planet. So I think having sample return missions are so important, and also they're so important for public engagement as well. You can put them in a museum and people can come and have a look, and they can sort of share that space experience as well. And then also the samples around for hundreds and hundreds of years for, you know, all of our descendants in hundreds of years' time to answer new questions about the sample as well. So I think it's fantastic that Japan have chosen to specialize in this area. I think it's going to be really important. And obviously it's really important for projects like the one that you're describing here, to learn more about asteroids, to see if there might be some resources in there that we could use. Brilliant. Right. So yeah, I'm very excited about all of these missions.
And it is an international effort. Like Hayabusa 2 involves international efforts, including European countries. And so Germany provided some small rover to run an asteroid and something like that. So I really appreciate those collaborations.
Right. Well, it's been really exciting to be involved in all of these missions. So you mentioned earlier about the moon, and I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about why you think there is so much interest now in visiting the moon. Mm-hmm. If we can go back to that.
Sure, because during Apollo era, reaching the moon, you know, sending a human on the moon was a big goal. It was a moonshot. However, now the goal is to explore the moon as an outpost to expand our frontiers to Mars, because we found the existence of water on the moon, and if we, you know, utilize that water, we can, you know, get drinking water on the moon. Or if you can separate in oxygen and hydrogen, they can be utilized as a propellant of the rockets to reach farther orbits to Mars and beyond. So the moon has a lot of resources. Actually, the water is a very precious resources in space. So how to utilize water on the moon is the key. But now we know the existence of the water. However, we don't know how to extract water from regolith or from ice. So this is another, next step to if we utilize the water on the moon or not. So that is why we are trying to send spacecrafts and humans near the South Pole area to examine how to utilize water. So those results is the key to expand our frontier.
Right, exciting times.
Yes, very exciting.
Yeah.
Some Japanese university and architecture company proposed the artificial gravity facility on the moon and on Mars. If we build lunar base or Mars base, and we, you know, spend generations on the moon and on Mars, then probably we might need artificial gravity. So this is
right. Because I know astronauts can really suffer in space, right? If they're in a gravity-free environment for a long time. Could you say, did you have any health experiences from the lack of gravity during your trip?
Yes, in microgravity, because we don't have to walk, so our muscles, bone densities get weak. So to prevent that, we do exercise for about 2 hours every day, and then muscles and bone densities are fine, no problem, almost no problem right now. But however, we have to spend 2 hours every day, so it's not very efficient. And also we found there were some effects on our eyesight during microgravity stay.
Oh, really?
longer in space, then ratio of the affecting eyesight is getting higher. Up to 40% of the long duration crew members get affected their eyesight. And it's not recovered even during the rehabilitation process. It's not recovered. So that's a problem.
Wow.
And, check the details, and there are lots of, effects happens on our bodies, small effects, but if it's accumulated, and it's going to be a huge impact. And we have some experiments on board the International Space Station, and some fish or some frogs can hatch from the eggs, and it's fine. But for the chickens and babies, chicks, cannot hatch from eggs in a microgravity, so they need gravity. Yeah. So
interesting.
Some need gravity.
Right. So that's why your colleagues at the University of Kyoto are planning this artificial gravity. Can you say a little bit about how it works? Is that thing spinning? Is that how it works?
It's spinning. It's a centrifugal force.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. And how big would it be?
Oh, the diameter is kilometer.
Right. Oh, wow. Okay. Massive. Wow, that's incredible. Really interesting. Thank you. So one other thing I wanted to ask you about is being a woman in space industry. So of all the astronauts that have flown, not very many of them are women, and I'm sure throughout your career you've been a woman in a whole field of men. And I wondered if you could say a little bit about whether you've faced any particular challenges, and if you've got any messages for girls who might want to follow in your footsteps.
Okay, sure. Right now, about a little bit more than 10% of the entire space flyers are women. Now the ratio is increasing recently. So I hope, the ratio is getting more equal eventually. But in Japan, well, probably many girls doesn't select STEM area in a college, especially in engineering and the deep tech area. The females ratio is very low in Japan. It's about 10% or so, and lower than the world average. So we need to encourage more women in the STEM area. And also we need to make more, better work-life balance in Japan, I guess. And this is in one movie.
Okay, as well.
It's a French movie, and female astronaut, French astronaut, and her daughter, and they are growing all together during her training phase. So I'm very, have very good sympathy of this movie, because she's French, so her training should happen in other countries, because France has its own human spacecraft, same as Japan. So the training is away from home country. So should be getting along at the beginning, and then gradually make friends and gain supporters and something like that. So it's kind of hard to make life and work balance during the training phase. But it's challenging, but it's not impossible. So I like to encourage more women to challenge first. So just, knock the door first, to that, at the beginning, just, try and try. There should be a way. There is a way always. So
great. Thank you. Right. So I know we're starting to get some questions in the chat, so I won't talk too much longer, but I have a final question, which is about the Earthshot Prize. So I know you're now working for that, and I know that that's a prize that is trying to search for solutions to the planetary emergency. And I'm wondering how you got involved in this, so that I know maybe a lot of astronauts kind of see the world with a different perspective when they go into space. And I was wondering if that was the case for you, and also if you see any parallels in how we have to tackle the climate emergency in cooperation with all the nations together, the same way that we're going to explore space together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you so much. The Earthshot Prize was initiated by Prince William in 2020. And the spirit comes from the moonshot, actually. So the moonshot made impossible possible in a decade, sending humans on the moon. It seems, impossible at that time, but it came true in a decade. So the same thing. The Archer Prize aims to have a pathway to solve our environment on a home planet in a decade. So it's a 10-year award, and each year we award 5 winners from 5 categories. And I, as a counselor, I selected the winners from the 15 finalists each year. And so we had always a very hard, very complicated, very challenging discussions to select winners. And the first year, 2021, even a 14-year-old girl from India was selected as a finalist. She invented an ironing cord using a solar power system. And the Japanese water recycling companies, startup companies, was one of the finalists as well. And the last year, the second year, Notpla is a winner from United Kingdom. And it was very exciting, very inspiring. So instead of plastic, they utilize seaweed to build food container or some packages. So they eliminate plastics and utilize seaweed. And the low carbon materials also from United Kingdom. So they can build a concrete, but it's not just zero emission carbon dioxide. It absorbs carbon dioxide. The concrete absorbs. So it's very inspiring. And this year from the UK, Enzo creates a tire, very innovative tire, to reduce the emission, small particles from the tire. So it keeps a clean air. And also from UK, Color Fix. It's a dyeing system of the fabrics. So it has a very organic, and the wastewater, they can reduce wastewater by almost 95%. So those are the finalists and winners. So the reason why I am supporting the Archer was because, the spirit comes from the moonshot, and also the saving the environment is the innovation is also the idea. A lot of idea comes from the space assets. And some finalists utilizes space assets, space data to monitor the atmosphere or monitor the landscape and monitor the land usage and so on. So the lots of technologies are now seamless from the ground and the space. And I really like the idea to connecting those two assets to save our home planet.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you for your work on the Earthshot Prize. It's so important, I think. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much, Naoko-san. I learned so much this last hour, and it's been really inspiring talking to you. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much, everyone who's been watching online, and thank you for all your questions. It's been great. And finally, thank you to everyone from the Dow Foundation. So Jason James, who organised the session, and Izzy and Nana, who've been arranging everything behind the scenes. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time and for setting this up. And okay, that's it from us. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Yes, gratitude is mine. Thank you, Sara, and thank you for everybody who participated today. Thank you so much.